This is Twisted Passages with award-winning author Marie Sutro. Now, let's take a deep dive into the dark world of psychological thrillers and meet the authors who created them.
Hello, and welcome to Twisted Passages. I'm your host, Marie Sutro, and today we have phenomenal mystery and suspense author Elka Ray here to talk about her new release, A Friend Indeed. Welcome, Elka.
Hi, Marie. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you so much for coming, and thank you for such an outstanding read. Oh my gosh, I cannot wait to jump in to all the little details that I've been waiting to ask you about. But before we do, can you start us off with an overview of the story?
Yeah, so it is about, well, basically, I saw a meme. This was a long time ago, on social media, and it was about, something like a real friend will help you hide the body. And so, of course, I thought, well, who would I help? And I thought of my best childhood friend right away, mostly because if she was in that situation, there'd have to be a really good reason. She wouldn't just be off killing people. And so what would that reason be? And it was sort of, that question of why would I help and how did this happen that led to the story.
So you have kind of two main characters who tell us the story, Joe and Dana. And Dana's the one who kind of picks up the meme, right? For you, she's the one who, or picks up the phone in this case and says, "Hey, Joe, by the way."
Yes, definitely. So they're basically, it's about two old best childhood friends whose lives have turned out really, really different. One of them is a struggling single mom who's kind of, her life has fallen apart, and the other one is fabulously wealthy, but there's some sort of discrepancy and disparity between them, and then also some sense of obligation between them. But a lot of love as well, a lot of old history. And I think all of that plays into Joe's decision to help Dana out of a very sticky situation.
Very sticky situation. So Joe is called in the wee hours of the morning. And it is like the meme, "Hey, could you come over and help?" And when she gets there, it just starts getting worse and worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
You got the idea from the meme. Can you give us a little bit about the setting and kind of how that strikes home for you?
Yeah, so I set it in the Pacific Northwest. I set it in the States. That was more just for kind of, I guess, commercial reasons, but I'm Canadian and I grew up on Vancouver Island. So it's really a very similar landscape. And I basically set it in a sort of similar place to where I grew up, sort of on the coast, and some really, basically Dana lives, on this beautiful seaside mansion. And I really used, I think, a Pacific Northwest coastal setting.
It was absolutely beautiful and so atmospheric. The neighborhood that Dana lives in, the neighborhood Joe lives in, the town that they live in. I am a huge fan of the Pacific Northwest, and I absolutely adored that setting. So cinematic. You painted the scene so beautifully, and all it did was ratchet up the suspense in so many ways. But you're not in the Pacific Northwest. You're not living there anymore, right? It's stateside or Canada side, right?
No, I've been living in Vietnam for 30 years. So I grew up mostly on Vancouver Island, and then I went to Vietnam, this is a million years ago, for 1 year. And then I ended up getting a job, and it was so fascinating, and I stayed. So yeah, I've been in Asia for a long, long time, but I do go back to Vancouver Island very regularly. Usually, for a few months a year, because my parents are there.
I was curious just because, again, it was so atmospheric and the setting was that extra character that every author is always hoping it would be. So I was kind of curious, was that just kind of heartfelt memories? But it sounds like, oh no, you're still living and breathing it on a regular basis.
Yeah, I definitely, I have family there. I have my best friends, best childhood friends are there. And it's so beautiful. It really, as you said, it really is an amazing place to be. And so I've definitely wanted my kids to get to be there and experience that.
And when you have those kind of friends there, the kind that you can call at that hour of night, you got to go back because you got to keep those relationships tight, right?
That is absolutely true. So I told the friend, of course, and her, as soon as I told her the plot, she was just like, oh yeah, no question. Of course I would help you. Thank you.
You chose the right one. You're good buddies. Speaking of those good buddy relationships, there was so much that was just so thought-provoking in this book in terms of what friendships mean, how we relate to each other, specifically female friendships, because both women are mothers, and that can have a way of changing those kinds of bonds in certain ways. And, specifically, it's one thing when we're single and we're in high school or college or just starting out and it's just us and our buddies. But when children come in, then that ride or die concept kind of shifts a little bit. And I saw you playing with that in different ways. Each of the moms has demands upon their time, demands upon their hearts. And they're playing a very dangerous game.
Yeah.
How did you come about that from those different perspectives of what it means to be a friend and what it means to be a mother, and where those kind of rank?
I mean, I don't think any of this, I don't really plot things out in advance. So I just have an idea and I play with it and see what happens. So none of that was planned, but definitely it's something that I think about a lot. I think as soon as you have kids, suddenly, your priorities really do change. And I think most people would do pretty much anything for their kids. And it becomes, and also when you write suspense, it's all about ratcheting up the stakes. It's about putting as much pressure on the characters as possible to see how they'll crack or if they'll crack. And, so it's just all, and I didn't plan it, but it's an obvious way to add more pressure to the situation.
It really is. It really throws everything into a pressure cooker, because when you think about that and you think, oh, gee, who are my ride or die buddies who can, I could call at that hour if I needed to. That person who's taking on that role wants to jump in because they love their friend. But then what are the implications potentially for their children? Those stakes are super high, the way you set them up in this book. And you really get the reader a little conflicted about the characters and their motives and maybe some of their decisions. Was that something that in addition to ratcheting up the suspense in terms of looking at the psychology of it, did you enjoy torturing your characters a little bit, Elka?
I guess I must, right? I think I torture myself more than anything. I think that I am someone who always sees multiple sides to any situation. I am very much not a black and white thinker. And I really like moral ambiguity, and I find it really interesting. And I think the whole idea of sort of good versus bad characters is really mythical, because I believe that, we all have a mix, and that in different situations, different things would come out. And also, life just isn't fair. So I think that this book is very much about some people have advantages that other people don't, and therefore they maybe won't behave as well as if they'd had all those advantages.
And what was interesting, the way that you played with, socioeconomic distinctions, and the way that you played with moral ambiguity, and all of those fantastic shades of gray that you painted for us, was you really delved into where is everyone's moral compass, and does it shift over the course of the story?
Mm-hmm.
Almost shifting moralities sometimes, and our perception as the reader of the character's morality. Is that something you were saying for yourself, that you always see multiple sides? Is it easy for you to discern that, like even in your real life when you're looking at people, and how sometimes moralities shift and might move according to circumstance?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that I often can see, real life. I mean, if someone, I live in Vietnam, if someone steals something, say, and I know they're really poor, well, I don't judge them the same way as, if someone really wealthy did that.
And that's, I think you really pulled so much from that into this book, because there were so many times where I would judge a character, or have an opinion on them, and just be turning the page really aggressively, like, why are they doing that? And then in the very next page, you'd give us maybe some reasons for why they did it, and then all of a sudden I'm going, oh, why did I blame them? It's like, you really tugged on the heartstrings back and forth.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. I mean, I blame people too. Like we all, I think we have to, really. I mean, there is right and wrong, but things are just really complicated always.
The other thing that came up, obviously, a big part of friendship is loyalty. And again, you have loyalty to your family, you have loyalty to your friends, but you also have loyalty to yourself. And one of the things I think you did very well was, these women are responding. That's, there's the precipitating event, and they're responding to that. And basically the whole book, they're kind of responding. The plot is a response to that initial event. But there are times where they stop and look at themselves, independent of I'm a mom, independent of I'm whoever, right? This is my job. This is my socioeconomic status. And there are moments where they look inward. Are those tougher to write, or do you enjoy those moments more, where it's just kind of the character kind of doing their own self-analysis?
I am not very strategic when I write. So it's really, the characters really do kind of just have lives of their own and are sort of telling the story. Of course, there's editing where you have to sort of wrangle things back and play around with stuff, make sure it works. But really, I'm not thinking about that. I'm just letting them tell the story. And yeah, of course, to me, they're real people. At least when I'm writing them. After the book's done, I forget about them quite fast.
That is easy to do, because there's so much before it actually hits market, and
Absolutely.
You're writing other things. What do you think, after delving into it so deep in this book, what do you think defines a healthy friendship?
I mean, I do think loyalty is a big part of it, but I do think there has to be equality. And it doesn't have to, that doesn't mean that things have to be totally the same. Like, you can be friends with someone of a very different background, but you both have to be, the power has to be balanced.
Power is really important. And I think when we're young, we take that for granted, that this is the person I have a good time with. And it's
Yeah.
easy usually when you're younger. The older you get, the more you realize that power does play a role. And
Mm.
unfortunately, there's bad actors out there who will manipulate that power for their own ends. Um, Another question: how far do you think any of us should go for a friend, especially if we have other responsibilities?
I don't know. I mean, I think that in this case, this was to, especially Joe, this is someone who's swept up in the moment and reacting purely by emotion. And I think that would be really easy to do. But obviously, I don't think this was a great idea.
No. And I don't think any of us want that call. Really.
Make this.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
It is. It really is a tough one, and it would be a really tough situation. But I think Joe could have probably, offered different solutions at that moment.
And I think that was one of the other things that you did so well in terms of letting the reader totally buy into it, which is each of these women have lives leading up to the event that we first find them in.
Mm.
And that very much informs who they are and how they feel they need to respond in that moment. And that was very powerful. And the way that you kind of slow played it out to us, what everybody's real motivations were and what their backgrounds are and everything else. Oh, it was done so well. All of your twists and turns. I mean, I was falling for every one of them.
Thank you. I'm so glad. Thanks.
You're welcome. Another question about friendship, because these women do come from different places, and their friendship has had some tests for a variety of reasons in the past. Mainly geographic differences, as a lot of us have with long-term friends. Can friends be family? We always say that, like, oh, you're family, but are they really?
I think that with time, yes. I think that, people you've known a long, long time, they really do become like family in that even if they do things you don't like and, there's parts of them you don't like, they're just sort of, it's too late, they're yours.
The die is cast. They're there.
That's how I think of them. So I do think it's like family, but I do also think that, when push comes to shove, most people will put their children first.
You crafted a beautiful, beautiful suspense story. What drew you to mystery and suspense as a genre?
Oh, so, a long time ago, I tried to write literary fiction. And so that was sort of when I was young, that was what I read. And I wasn't very good at it. Like I basically nothing happened and it just nothing happened. And then I realized that, well, I had sort of a big crisis in my life that I realized a lot of literary fiction is really depressing. And so I didn't want to read it anymore. And I started reading mystery. And mystery, I mean, it seems like it should be depressing because it's, always about a death, but at least there's a solution in mystery. And I think it was that resolution that really drew me in. And so I became addicted to it. And as well as reading a ton of it, that's what I started to write. And I really need some kind of mystery, like in anything I read, to kind of pull me forward. And I do like that promise of at least we'll get to find out why, because in real life, we often don't, there is no why. We don't get an answer.
I actually love your answer. And I talk to so many people who love it, and so many people come at it from that perspective. Me, myself, life itself is a puzzle. Other people are a puzzle. What happens and why is a puzzle. And like you said, most often we never get answers to that, and we can question it our whole lifetimes. But in these little stories, we get the resolution, and we get hope that there can be resolution and that it could all make sense in the end. And I think that keeps us going in a powerful way. So thank you for putting it that way.
Yeah, I think I think you put it better. That is exactly how it is.
I was just running back on what you did. It was beautiful. Elka, for existing fans of yours and for all the new folks out there who are going to love your work, what is the best place for people to find you?
So for social media, I'm most active on Instagram. And it is elka.ray. So ELKA.RAY. And I have a kind of small but really good bookish community there.
Awesome. Well, again, a friend indeed. What an absolutely phenomenal read. We'll keep you guessing. So many twists and turns and lots of puzzles to solve. And best of all, Elka solves them so well for you.
Marie, thank you so much for having me on. And you've really made my week. Even though I'm in Bali, you've made my week.
Well, I'd rather be in Bali with you, but I'll take this. So thank you again, Elka, for joining me today. And thank you all for joining us on this episode of Twisted Passages. We hope to see you next time.